All right. As we've got others still coming in, I appreciate y'all being here, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So we'll have lots of time. Look, I'm gonna introduce Bruce and Laura. Many of you in the first service already met them. If you were here yesterday, you probably met them. They are missionaries in Nicaragua, and Bruce is a candidate for support. So as we're going through this mission conference, he is here as a candidate. He is also a missionary with ABWE, or as we affectionately call it, Abwe. Jackie called it Abwe one day in the office. She said Abwe, and I had this strange look on my face. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, Abwe, the mission group that's going to be here for the one-day event. I said, oh, ABWE. Yeah, Abwe. So that was fun. Y'all have fun with Jackie at her expense, okay? But they're missionaries with Abwe. There we go, ABWE, and they're going to share this morning their ministry. They're a little bit. I hope Laura's going to share maybe part of her testimony. So we're going to hear from them, hear how God's worked in their life. And then they're going to share the ministry there in Nicaragua, all the things that they're doing, and also tying in with that, what we can do as a church, how we can partner with them, not just financially, but as we plan trips down there. And then at the end of this, we're going to roll out a date. And if you're interested in going on a mission trip there, we've got a tentative date planned. And if there are enough that are interested in going on those dates, then we'll take a team down to Nicaragua. Okay, so without any further ado, Doug, if you'll come. Doug, I've been trying to call you Doug all morning, and I mean, that got me because I have gone back and forth with you two in my head. I've struggled. Doug and Carol. No, it's Bruce and Carol. No, it's Bruce and Laura. All right. So Bruce and Laura, and I don't know if Miss Laura's coming as well, but you guys come and share. You're wired, so you're good, okay. Man. Have at it. Do you need anything? You got what you need?
I'm set. Yeah, I got all the stuff.
All right.
Great. We're Bruce and Laura, right? That's us. Yeah, Bruce and Laura. I think we got that. It really is exciting for us to be here with you, and it's always fun to share what God is doing in our part of the world and also talk about what God's doing with ABW in different places. It really has been a neat weekend for us to be able to see some of the other fields as well and hear what God is doing. And just know that we're a part of something really big, right? That global missions movement that's happening around the world. There's a lot of stuff happening. And there were rumors, that missions was dying. Was that kind of ending for the United States? Was the mantle passing from the United States to other parts of the world to send out missionaries? Think about that. Is our missions fire dying here in the United States, or can we really see God still do something through American churches? We want to talk about some different things connected to that today, but we also want to introduce you guys to the ministry that we're a part of and to who we are, so you kind of have a better idea of who Bruce and Laura Edgar are, and have an idea of what we do. I come from a military family, so my family bounced around for the first 5 or 6 years of my life. My dad was in the Marine Corps, so I was born in California. We moved back and forth across the country and ended up in Tallahassee where things were pretty good. And then my dad got his final promotion up to E9 because he wanted to retire with more money, and they moved us to Michigan. Now, people from Michigan love Michigan. It was not a good experience for our family. It was very bad. We moved in next to awful neighbors in the middle of race riots and things there in the capital city, and Lansing's not a pretty place in my mind. It was bad. And my mom was about at the point to leave my dad because this was not good. It was bad for our family too. My brother was in his last year of high school and got uprooted from Tallahassee, where there's a really good program at FSU, moving in between high school and college, all the great stuff, all lined up. Boom, he gets pulled out of that, and we moved to Lansing. So it was bad. But a lady invited my mom to a women's luncheon where she heard the gospel. Now, my mom had grown up in church, taken us to church. I got baptized on the Rough and Ready Island and out in California in the base chapel. I was a Christian, right? all of that was her upbringing, but then she really heard the gospel, and I think it was at that point where God really entered into her life and started to change her life. So that a difference was there. And at that time, they worked it out, and he retired from the Marine Corps. We moved down to Florida, and we ended up in Lakeland, Florida. And we had a house lined up for us through the military. Everything was looking good, but the guy died. His wife didn't want to sell the house, and so we got stuck in a hotel off of I-4 for about a month over Christmas. That was miserable, mostly because my brother shot my little water rocket onto the roof of the hotel. That was even worse. So I'm a miserable, we're all in that, it's just bad. But what did God do? He opens up an opportunity for us to buy a house out in the orange groves on the south side of Lakeland. It was a mile down the street from a good Baptist church. In fact, it's the church that the Gibsons are out of. Fellowship Baptist Church there in Lakeland is a church that we moved a mile from, and we started going there when I was a little kid. And it was at that church that I really started to hear Bible teaching and heard the gospel. And over time, we got into a different church nearby, opened up out of Fellowship, started Heritage Baptist where we're from. And God just gave me experience after experience to learn the scriptures at a good church, to be involved in ministry at a good church. Something we talked about last night is that God gave me in that church examples of godly men and godly fathers, which my dad was never a Christian, and so, I didn't have that example, but God gave me godly men through that church to give me an example to live after, and they took me camping, and we went to camp, and we did all sorts of activities, but, those guys were there to really help me in my upbringing. So God did that to bring me all the way through into high school, where I started to work at Camp Gilead, which is out near Polk City. I worked there in the summer times and got a desire to teach, and went to college to teach, and I taught for 12 years over at Lakeland Christian, teaching biology and Bible over in there. At that time, all along we were thinking about missions, but a missionary had come to camp and talked about teaching overseas, and that kind of guided me in that path. So when I went to teach, I told him, 5 years. I'm going to be here 5 years. I just want to get some teaching experience, and I'm going overseas. Well, into that 5 years, I realized I really didn't know a lot. And so I needed to go back and get some more Bible training. And Dallas Seminary had a branch over in Tampa. So I went to Dallas Seminary, got some extra Bible teaching in while I was teaching school full time. So it took a little longer. At the end of that time, it was perfect timing for us to go to Nicaragua. God opened that door right at that time for us to head to Nicaragua. So I'm the luckiest guy in the world, apparently, because, right? Or is God sovereign? God's sovereign. He put all those things in place all along the way. And I have to say, man, I wouldn't be where I am if it weren't for God's hand every day in my life, guiding my steps and putting those people into place that guided me into missions and into a Christian lifestyle. All of those things happened because God put those people along the way into our lives to influence us. Okay, so that's a little of my testimony to get us up to where Laura and I met. Now, here comes Laura to remind myself who I'm with.
I think it's super fun. I am like a third or fourth generation Floridian. I was born in Clearwater. My family actually founded the city of Clearwater. So that is super fun, super nostalgic for me to, have our home base so close to that and to be able to go over and visit family there. So when I was living in Clearwater as a young child, I was in a Christian family, went to Christian school there, and it was my first grade teacher that led me to the Lord. And so fast forward, my family moved to Lakeland when I was in about fourth grade and attended Lakeland Christian, where we ended up teaching from the fourth grade until I graduated. But when I was about 12 or so, I started, I don't know what the Lord did to have me start reflecting as a 12-year-old, but I remember thinking, wow, my first grade teacher had a huge impact, life-changing impact on me. And I want to have that same impact on other children. And so from that moment, I knew that I would go into elementary education. The Lord confirmed that, and I went to Bryan College in Tennessee and got my early elementary ed degree with an early childhood endorsement. And the Lord was very kind to let me go back and teach at Lakeland Christian. But before that, I was in a missions conference at Bryan my senior year, and we had a speaker that challenged us to be planning to go to the mission field, but willing to stay. And at that moment, I was like, okay, Lord, I don't know when or where or with whom, but I am planning to go. Went back to Lakeland, started teaching. After my first year of teaching, went on a missions trip to Ecuador with my church for about 3 weeks there. And I thought, the Lord was doing some things in my heart on that trip that needed to be done. Bruce and I had met and actually gone out on 2 dates before that trip, but there was nothing, no spark, no nothing. So went on that trip. The Lord did some things in my heart he needed to do, and came back from that trip thinking, okay, if I'm still single, unattached at the end of this school year that I've committed to teach, I'm going to come back to Ecuador and teach at the Alliance Academy there. And I thought I could do that. We went back like in August. We went back to school, and I don't know except to say the Lord flipped the switch. And then we had our first date that we liked each other, because our first date was a setup. That's a long story. But we had our first date that we liked each other, and then we were married 2 years later to the same weekend of the date we liked each other. So we'll be 30 years in September. So I'm really grateful. But if you had told me, it's like, I went to camp once. I was like 7th grade or something. That was not for me. I only went once. I got the Perfect Hair All Week award. That gives you any insight into 12-year-old me. So if you had told me then that I would be living in a third world country and I would want to be there, I would have laughed at you. I mean, my friends, even when I told them we were going to Nicaragua, they were like, wait, what? Who are you? And I did not sign up for the grass hut tour. I will be honest about that. We do not live in a grass hut or, that kind of thing. God gives gifts to different people. But I'm just really grateful that the Lord brought us together the way he did. It was really fun. I would love to be able to tell you the whole story, but growing up at Lakeland Christian, from the moment of my board interview to be hired, they were asking me, is this a stepping stone to the mission field? They were already trying to set us up. But it was a gift. It was really fun. We have 2 children. I taught for 6 years. I taught 2nd grade, which was my dream. Taught for 6 years, and then we have 2 children. Peter is 26 and working currently on a PhD at UCF, about 20 minutes from here. That's where he lives. Emma is 25, and she lives in Lakeland and is working for the American Heart Association. So we're just very grateful for the way that the Lord has provided for them outside of us. And that they see that, right? They see mom and dad could not have provided for Peter. It'll be 12 years of education fully paid for. We couldn't have done that. But the Lord has provided for that for Emma to go to school as well and to give her jobs that are the desire of her heart, which is the desire that he has for her. And so we're just very, very thankful. And yeah, there's been some hard times and things that have not been fun. Getting robbed was not fun. But we know that that's where God has us. And we've said all along, we will be there until God changes our direction. And sometimes I wanted to feel like my direction was being changed. It wasn't. Not yet. But we're just really grateful and thankful for the opportunity that we have to be here today. We've had a lovely time getting to know Gina and her husband. No, and just the people. You have made us feel like family, and we appreciate that. And so, I don't know what else you want me to say, but that's our story.
That is a running joke in our family because my name is Bruce, and we have a whole list of different spellings and different pronunciations of my name in Nicaragua. We've heard just about everything under the sun, and so we have that list running, and now we can start a list for Laura. We can start doing that for her. So right now we're regional directors for Central America and Mexico. We have missionaries in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, missionaries connected through Live Global are in Honduras and that area, so we work with them a little bit too. And then we have a little bit of a good-sized group, 4 families up in Mexico right now with some prospects coming. So God's given us oversight over that region, and we visit them and do that. But I'll kind of give you from the beginning. We arrived in Nicaragua in 2007, and our main purpose in going there was to work at the ABWE Ministry Center. So if you come on a trip with us to Nicaragua, you'll be able to stay at the Ministry Center. The idea behind that is a key here. Our purpose in building a ministry center was not to have another camp or to just have a place where you do training or to have a nice pool, which that was the first thing made because it's hot. And to draw groups in and churches in, we started with a pool. We have some cabins. We now have a multi-purpose building also, all those things. You know what a multi-purpose building is. In English is a gym. We have a gym. So we have all those things. But the purpose of the ministry center was to accelerate church planting. Okay? That's a key. The missionary that had the vision for the center came to Nicaragua. He knew that Nicaragua needed theological training and needed churches to be planted, but he had a lot of experience. He had grown up as a missionary working in Chile, and in Chile, they had churches for years and years and years, and eventually they got to the point where they could have a camp facility or have the theological training centers and things like that. So his thought was an experiment. The idea was, could we start with a property like this and accelerate the process of church planting by having a place already to do the camps, to do the training, to do the baptisms, to do retreats, and that kind of stuff. And we feel like that is what has been happening. And so what we're going to talk about today is that idea of church planting and how that can happen. The ministry center has been a big part of that because when teams come down, they stay at the ministry center. We can have big events there, whether it's camps or training sessions, conferences, fun stuff like that. A lot of baptisms have happened in that pool. So those things kind of form a central hub for a lot of different churches to come and have activities and to grow. So remember, the point is accelerate the process. Instead of just slowly planting one church after another, can we multiply churches and can we make that happen quicker? Can we do that in a context that is healthy as well? So it's all part of that process. We just passed 20 years of ministry there in Nicaragua. We just celebrated 20 years at Centro Abem this past year or so. And that was an exciting time because when we come together and celebrate that, it's not just a celebration of buildings, it's a celebration of all the people that have been there. So guys like these are my friends that are out pastoring churches throughout Nicaragua. And they're leaders in different areas throughout Nicaragua. And so when we come together and celebrate the ministry center, we are celebrating all the people that have gone through the ministry center and been through the trainings for church planting and are out there doing things. So it's exciting to me to be a part of something like that because we feel like it really has had a big impact in Nicaragua. Okay? Now, that part that U.S. churches come and do with us are being a part of mission teams. And we really are super flexible. We have 100 different ways that you can be involved in mission teams. We offer a lot of opportunities, whether we have schools come down and they'll do like a regular VBS type program for the churches. And again, they're doing it in churches. So we partner North American churches with these church plants to help those church plants get up and running in their neighborhoods. So they get exposure in their neighborhoods. People come to the place. A problem we run into is when I go visit a Baptist church for the first time, I have trouble finding them because they don't always have signs. They don't have stuff out on the road and things like that. And you wonder, why don't you just put a sign up? I'll drive down the street. I'll say, hey, do you know where the Baptist church is? And people just look at me like, I don't know. And so when we bring groups in and we have activities, we have a medical clinic or whatever it's going to be, those things draw people into that church and they find out there's a church there and they get to know that local church. So we use mission teams to do that, to accelerate the process of church planting by making that church known in that area, in that neighborhood. This is a very new church plant, and so we did a youth activity there with the kids, all sorts of games and other stuff, and then had like a regular VBS would be like here in the United States, but just doing that in that context, and it draws in the kids and the parents come to those things, so it really is a great way to get those churches known in their areas. We do a lot of construction stuff, whether it's at the ministry center or we offer that out in churches to help with churches. There's all that kind of stuff going on. And you do need to pass by the table back there. Con Don Timoteo has a whole bunch of information for you back there. So if you're interested in that type of a trip, there's a lot of those opportunities around the world. We do it in small context there in Nicaragua, but there's some big projects around the world that can use your talents. So you want to check in with him about that kind of stuff. So when you think of a team coming down, it could be a construction thing. It could be door-to-door evangelism, passing out tracts, Bibles, praying for families. That is something that is exciting. And you know what? A lot of U.S. churches don't do that anymore. It's just not culturally that's changed a little bit. When we had some kids from Canada come down, they said, we're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. We would never do that where we are. But man, in Nicaragua, it's an open, people love to visit and talk, and it's a very warm culture. So it's a great opportunity to go and witness to people and have an influence in that neighborhood. And then on the right, you see the group of kids there at the ministry center in front of the multi-purpose building. And they're playing the giant Jenga. So there's fun stuff like that you can do with teams as well. There's a lot of different opportunities. We mentioned medical teams. We do that on a very small scale, but you can talk to other people about doing that on a grander scale. And also just recently, Beautiful Feet has done training in our country with the pregnancy counseling in churches. And we love that. Why? Because that's a local church type ministry that can have an impact in our area as well. So trip-wise, we will focus on some ideas, but there really are a lot of things possible. And throughout ABWE, there's all sorts of different trips possible. And if you weren't here yesterday, you want to figure out how to get into that app, and it'll give you all the different trips that are possible. So there's a lot of opportunities that we want to have for you. Okay? So the main verse that for years we've focused on for our pastoral training program is 2 Timothy 2:2. It's in the middle of those other ones. It starts with, "You then, my child, be strengthened by the grace that is in Christ Jesus. What you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also." That's our key verse for the Bible training program. But it's surrounded by also share in suffering as a good soldier of Jesus Christ, right? So what we're doing with our church planters is we're just training them in what we've learned ourselves in our own local churches, okay? Now, there's a little bit of difference there because churches in Nicaragua don't look like this. They don't feel like this. They're a lot hotter. We don't have air conditioning in most of them. There's a couple. But, it's just different in a lot of ways. Culturally, it's a lot different. Now, they do some things because missionaries in the 50s did things, and that became a tradition. So there's things that are carryovers, but things are going to look different. The music may sound different. They may do some things very differently from us, but that core stuff that's biblical is what we're trying to pass on, and it's been happening for 2,000 years, right? We're not making something up that's new. We are just passing on what we have learned through the scriptures, through many witnesses. We're just passing that on to faithful men that can continue to do that work. And so we feel like what we see in Nicaragua could be termed, and I say could be, termed as a church planting movement. And that's one of our goals as a mission, is in training leaders and training church planters and creating missions movements, but those mission movements come from church planting movements. We want to see a movement happen. We don't want to just add a church. We want to multiply churches. We want to accelerate this process. Okay? Now this is Sunday school, right? Are you ready? If you're asleep, it's time to wake up because you might have to answer some questions, okay? Because we're going to ask some questions here, and I want you to focus on this. I'm a teacher, not a preacher, honestly, and my goal is to make you think. I don't care how you feel, because I don't have feelings, and it doesn't really bother me what you feel. So I want you to think seriously about what it means to be involved in church planting, because there's lots of, I'm skipping too far ahead. All right, there's lots of ideas. Oh, that's why I'm hitting the wrong button. Boop, we're back there. What does it mean to be a church? How do you decide that something is a church? There's people there, right? Now there's the famous verse, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. Is that a church? Oh, I'm hearing conflicting opinions on this, so. Well, there could be 2 or 3 lost people. Oh, now that's interesting. Yeah, if you get together Bible study at the Cracker Barrel, have you formed a church? Not necessarily. Now we would say, yes, the believers that are present are the universal church, right? We're all part of the universal church. God's people in this world at this time, we're part of that universal church. But are we the definition of a church? Okay, so yeah, we're mincing words. We're being nitpicky. But it's kind of important to be nitpicky when we start a little further down the line talking about fundraising and talking about your program and what you're doing. Okay, so we define a church as the people. What else has to be there to be a church? Okay, there's some worship there. There's gospel-driven worship that's there. There's preaching involved. Yeah, that's all part of the worship package, because worship is not just music, right? It's the music involved. It's the preaching involved. It's the meal afterward. Oh, wait, that doesn't have to be there, but it was in the early church, so maybe not maybe. So you get to those things. Those are some important things. There's worship involved. There's the preaching of the word is there. There's, what else? You did? There's discipleship going on. There's the passing on of that. There is a leadership there. So there's pastor, elders as a part of that. We would look at that and say, yeah, that church is, in our words, getting organized because they've got leadership. They've got some different things. Now, one of interesting, where we are one of our church associations that we work with, one of their prerequisites to being organized is you have to have a church building, which is interesting. That's just one of their rules. Is that a biblical rule? No. So we wouldn't put that in the list. But they would say, well, if we want to organize you, you got to have that. You got to be able to support your pastor. That's part of one of their rules. Okay, now is that a biblical rule? No, because pastors all over the world are bivocational, or they just donate their time to be a pastor. Others do that. Now, we're not asking Pastor Conrad to do that today, but if he wants to later. So there you have it. There's some things that we have in our minds that says that's a church, right? We do have some rules that we'd say, well, that probably means it's a real church. So that's what we want to think about. I'm going to present to you. I keep hitting the wrong button. This idea, I pulled this out of the Swedish Baptist Confession. And look at the date. It's 1861. It's a little ways down the line. They have a pretty long list of things that have to be in there. But some of the things you said just happen to be in there. What do you know? Sustain public worship under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, to choose among themselves shepherds or overseers and deacons, to administer baptism and the Lord's Supper. Remember that one. I don't think we mentioned that, but that is a key thing in being a church, because a church, I would say, has the responsibility and right to do that. I don't baptize random people. I am not Philip. He can do that. He's an apostle, but I don't do that. I always say, hey, you need to go to a church. You need to be a part of a church and have your pastor, their leaders do that. Promote godliness and brotherly love. Contribute to the spread of the gospel. Missions is a part of that. Also, that every such church is an independent body, free in its relation to other Christian churches, acknowledging Christ as its head. So that's a list that comes out this is 1861. If you go back a little ways, the list might be a little bit shorter. And if you go all the way back, you might say, well, yeah, in the early church, when Paul went through those cities and he established a church, it was the very basic model. But even Paul went back through and did what? He established elders in those churches. So we all have in our mind that it is a group of believers, but there should be some organization to it. Do we agree on that? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If you don't, it's okay to say so. Remember, I don't care how you feel. I just want to make you think. You need to think about this, because you need to ask questions sometimes. When you see someone say, we've seen over 100 churches planted. Hey, Bruce, define what a church is. These are church plants. Out of that 100 church plants, only 4 to 5 of them have gotten to organized status. Okay? In Nicaragua, it's a slow process. It is a poorer country. It's not the worst in the world or anything by any stretch. Well, we joke, it's not Africa. So, it's not Africa. In our hemisphere, it's the second on the list. We'd say it's the second poorest in our side of the world. So there are some things that slow it down, but really they have a desire to church plant. And they love the church planting process, but because of those rules, it takes them a little longer to get to organized status. So one of our associations says 25 members, one says 30 or 40 members, one says like way more than that because they really want to be able to support a pastor. And supporting a pastor in Nicaragua may look like $250 a month. So it's not a lot, but they still struggle to get to that number. And so you'd say, wow, to reach the benchmarks of an organized church is pretty difficult for rural Nicaraguan churches. They don't have the money to get to where they can support a pastor or build the church or do some of those things. So it's a slow process on the outside. But are there groups of believers meeting? Yes. Are they doing baptism and communion? Yes. Are they worshiping together? Yes. Are they supporting church planting and missions? They are, as much as they possibly can. They again are small and don't have a lot. But they're doing those things, so we say that they are literal church plants. They're in process. Okay, now I say that to you because I was looking up a church, and then I saw that they were connected to a certain ministry, and I had heard that ministry talk before about the number of churches they had planted, and it's in the hundreds of thousands. And they started the same time we did. 2007, they kind of started their ministry, and they're up to over 200,000 churches. And it's exciting to hear that number, but it makes me think that you guys are, investing with the wrong mission agency because we don't work that fast. Why not? Because there's a different definition. So that's why it's important to ask that question. Hey, what do you guys mean when you say you're church planting? What does it look like? That's why we want you to come visit our country or another country and say, hey, let's visit a church and see what that looks like. What does church planting look like in Nicaragua? How does it happen? What's the process? That kind of thing. Ask those questions because you want to be informed and get a real idea. It's exciting to throw out that number. Hey, 100 churches. Well, what does that mean? It means they're all in different stages of development. It means that some of them are healthy and they're growing and it's dynamic. Others are struggling because they're in areas that are more difficult than others. There's areas that it's very difficult to plant churches, and we have guys that are struggling, but God is doing a work. We do believe it is a movement because it's kept its momentum over, as you can see there, 8 graduating classes. That's over 16 years of classes, and we now have extension sites going out, and it's being taught by national pastors. Okay? So that's a key. It's me and another missionary sometimes, and the national pastor is doing the bulk of the teaching. So that's also a plus in that program and something that we're happy with. So we've got sites in the capital city of Managua. Sabico is about 2 hours to the north. Bluefields is over on the east coast. You'll see some pictures of these and up into Honduras now. So that's the idea. Ask questions and think about what it means when you hear missionaries talk about what they're doing. Hey, ask them questions. Poke at them a little bit. They need that. We need someone to ask some tough questions. Anyone have a tough question today? I'll let you ask. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. That is a spectacular question, and I'm going to jump ahead of that slide. We have our training started in Managua at the Ministry Center, and we realized in Nicaragua that the church had already been there for 100 years, so we weren't coming in and just needed to start something new. We already had 3 or 4 different church organizations we could work with, and they all had their own seminary. So we didn't want to put another seminary on the ground and compete for students, but we could take their seminary student, or Bible Institute student, better to say, and train them to plant a church. That's our 2-year program, is just church planting. So we give them the practical skills to plant a church. A big part of that is that they go in, they do a study of the area, find out what other churches are there. Do they need another Baptist church, or are they just, 3 on the same block kind of thing? They go and they start the small groups, they start the Bible studies, they build it up to that process of where they can, usually our goal is for them to start cell groups that'll divide. It's difficult for Nicaraguan churches to do that because they have the old style of, well, if you get a building, they'll come. So we've struggled with that. That's a legitimate struggle. Usually it starts in a house, but eventually it'll be like, well, when we get a building, then people will think we're serious. So it's a reality, and it's mental, saying, a building means you're going to stay. And so it's that process. But we're walking with them through that 2-year period. When they come to us to get the training, we walk them through the process and help them through that process of planting the church. It's similar in a lot of ways to what we would do here, evangelism and discipleship, but that process really starts with that study. That's what's really revolutionized things, because normally in the past it's been, hey, my aunt will let us use her house and we'll start a church. Then you get there and you realize there's a church here and here and here and here and here. There's 4 of them all around that house. Oh, but there's not one that preaches the gospel. Well, yeah, 2 out of 4 do, but we don't count them because we want to plant a church. That's been the tradition. And so we really focus on finding a place that really needs a church and can legitimately support a church too. That's been a struggle, because a lot of churches have been planted in areas that have no ability to support a church. And then the mother church complains, we've been supporting that church plant for 40 years. But no one wants to pull the trigger and say, no, it's a struggle. But excellent question. It is a very long process. Question?
Mostly Catholics? I mean, what
Yeah, good question. Traditionally Catholic, mixed with pagan stuff. Nicaragua is famous for a lot of witchcraft, but they would say the white side of white witchcraft, the nice stuff where you bless people, but bless them or curse them. But yeah, that's encouched in the culture. We have a whole area that's known as the white cities. The Ciudades Blancas is what they call them because of the witchcraft that's in those cities. So it's all part of the culture mixed in with the Catholicism. Our country, however, has shifted to be about 60% Catholic, 40% or so evangelical. So there's been a shift happening over the years. Unfortunately, that's turning into cultural evangelical because of the prosperity gospel. People cross over from the Catholic Church when they see the promises of prosperity gospel. They get there, it doesn't happen, and they just walk out the door. And now they're evangelicals in name instead of Catholics in name. So that's a big problem that we face. Planting, our church planters started there in Managua. As I said, we've moved up into Sabaco, which is exciting. We've worked with them a number of years. Originally, we went into Nicaragua to work after a hurricane and worked with them. And their teachers do the bulk of the teaching. They're graduates of the program, and they are national Nicaraguan teachers doing most of the teaching there. So that's the way we want it to be. I'm still working myself out of a job. Honduras, we just crossed over into there, have a good group of Baptist churches. They're super excited. They were already doing some church planting, but this has really accelerated the process for them, and really excited to keep moving forward. A good friend of mine who started the Institute of Church Planters in the beginning was Mark Hensler. He went with me to open up Honduras. So just give you an idea what that looks like. Just amazing, their commitment to church planting up there. So we're excited to continue working with them and doing some more. We are the real question mark of what would happen with Bluefields, but we've been able to go out there and work with Bluefields. The east coast of Nicaragua is weird because it has been English in the past, English speaking in the past. It's where the pirates would hide out when they were waiting for the gold to come up out of Colombia. Back in the day, they would hide out there, so the English kind of ran that side of the country. The pastor on the right is kind of from a Caribbean style background. The pastor, kind of with the checkered shirt, is an indigenous group called the Mosquito Indians. He's a Mosquito Indian, and so he pastors in that area as well. So we're just getting that one going, and obviously need help with that. And then another opportunity on the west coast of Nicaragua coming up. Looks like we'll have another. So I kind of thought things had wind down, but apparently God had bigger plans, and things have kind of exploded lately. And I'm not really sure how to handle that. So if you have good organizational skills, you can see me afterward. We can get some help. Here's the deal, right? We can talk all day about what happens, but it comes back to that 2 Timothy 2:2, just passing on what we know to people that can carry it to that next level, right? And it comes back to really trusting God to do his work through the local church, okay? You know, every person we train is different in their abilities and where God's put them, but we're confident that God is going to do his work through his church. And so that's what we're trusting in on that daily basis, is we're just trusting him to continue to do his work through the church. And this was our key verse from the very beginning. Confident that God is going to do his work. He had started it in us. You heard our testimonies that God had a plan for us and was doing things in our lives to get us to that point where we met each other, got together. We're interested, both of us, in missions, and he opened the door at just the right times for us to do training, to get to know people. He put just the right people in our lives when we needed them to send us to Nicaragua. And so all of those things are all part of God's plan, and we can trust him to work out his plan in our lives. Yes. Not because it's easy, but because he knows what he's doing better than we do, and we can trust him to do that. So it's been neat to see how God has done that throughout the day, throughout the years. We have a couple more, right?
We got 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Any questions? I'm going to show you some other ministries before we go on, but I want to give you a chance to ask anything you want to ask about Laura. I got some insight into that. Or you can ask her anything before we jump on to some other ministries, give you some other stuff to look at. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hey, Bruce, I had the pleasure of visiting you about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that stuck in my mind is the hygiene. Do you still do that ministry? Because I thought that might be a way to connect with you.
Okay. Yeah, we did. That connected more with COVID, didn't we?
What's that?
We did a lot of that connected with COVID. We do have one young lady, a single lady that's a medical professional, and so that kind of stuff works through her a little bit more when available, when a church wants to do that. And then we did a lot of it. We used COVID. Our country was very open during that time, so we could travel a lot, and we used COVID and hygiene a lot for witnessing, and it really had a big impact on churches. Yeah.
I just wanted to know if you go on a mission trip, is it something where you need to learn Spanish, or do a lot of the people speak English?
We will provide translators and let you try out your Spanish. So we can do those both. But yes, yeah, we do use translators a lot. And one of our goals, like if we do a door-to-door evangelism, we'll send you with a church member, a translator, and you to visit. You'll hand out tracts, Bibles. You'll be able to hear from that family and pray for them specifically. We like to do that because it really connects. Church members also is our goal. You know, we don't just bring a team in like a wave and say, all right, you guys, you're here to save Nicaragua. It doesn't work. You're only there for a week. But when you partner with a local church and work side by side with church members, you get to know that church and you get to actually connect with them. You'll learn from each other about how things work and how to do things. And so it's all part of getting a local church with a local church. That's what we like to do. You know, we kind of focus on that stuff. Okay. Yesterday we talked a little bit about Tactica. Again, if you didn't see that, if you're involved in policing, if you've been in the military, if you're a first responder, EMT, that kind of a background, Tactica is something you want to look at, and it's in your link tree. Okay, if you guys go into the link tree, there's Tactica Ministries in there, or tacticaministries.org, and it'll give you information about where you can connect with Ryan and Gretchen Rott. They've worked with the police down in Costa Rica for about 18 years now, and they have grown that ministry into other countries as well. And it's designed to reach the police there in Costa Rica initially, but it was expanded into EMTs, first responders in Costa Rica, but also in Ecuador. It's been down into Panama and some other places, and now is working out how to do that in the United States also. So if that's your background and you want to connect with them, go to that website and you can connect with Ryan and Gretchen Rott and see what they're doing in that area. Okay? There it is again. And you can connect with that. And you can also connect with us if you'd like to get emails, or we also have a Facebook where you can go to Edgar's in Nicaragua and find out about the Edgars. That's also on the table. That QR code is on the table if you want to do that. Oh, and don't forget, we're missionaries. Your handy dandy bookmark is back there on the table as well. So you can grab a bookmark and you get to look. You can, just black out my face and go with Laura. Do what you have to do. And connect with us some way. And we'll do that through the church as well. I did want to just throw out to you some other options since we have time. We have a good team in Mexico. They're spread out across northern Mexico in different cities, but they're doing a great job up there. And one really unique ministry that I wanted to mention to you, Carlos and Elisa, are in Culiacan, Sinaloa. What do you think of when you hear that word? Drug cartels, right. Carlos grew up in that city, and it was exciting to visit him and see his joy to live in Culiacan. Like, what? Wouldn't you want to leave here? He just loves his town. And we visited him, enjoyed the town. It was great. I mean, every now and again, things heat up. They do. But they have a unique ministry out in the camps around Culiacan, because all of that is agricultural, and they have migrant worker camps all around the city. And so they'll drive out into the campo, into those fields, go to those migrant camps, and witness, evangelize, disciple the people in those camps. Where do those guys come from? Those workers come from southern Mexico. The indigenous tribes in southern Mexico come up to that area. Instead of coming to the United States, they work in that area, and then they'll go back into their areas. And so the idea is to win them to Christ, disciple them, and get churches started in those indigenous groups down in southern Mexico. So a unique ministry that's there if you're interested in that kind of thing. Is it kind of a hot spot? Sure. Just the other day it heated up. Mexico heated up for a while, then it cools off. It's not always safe, but he would tell you how much he loves to live there. That's his favorite place to be. And you just like scratching your head. What are you thinking? But that's his hometown. And he's reaching it for Christ. All right? So, and that's an exciting thing. He's willing to go and do that, or willing to stay there and do that. And Eliza, they've got 2 kids now and raising them in that setting, taking their kids out to the camps with them and doing that kind of thing. So exciting ministry. And it's something you can think about. That would be a real challenge. The Caribbean, for us, is a unique place. A lot of the islands in the Caribbean have churches, lots of them. Not all of them are healthy, but they've been saturated by a lot of missions. But those churches haven't reached some of the big groups that are there now. Hindus and Muslims that have moved in over the years are still separate groups. And so when our missionaries talk to these churches, they say, hey, have you ever reached out to the Muslim community? We don't even know how. And so one of our goals is to help these churches in the region start to minister to Muslims and Hindus. And so, hey, we want you excited about the whole world when it comes to Muslims and Hindus. There's a lot of places you could go, but there are actually places nearby that you can have that same ministry as well, right here in the Caribbean. And you say, raise money to go to Jamaica? People kind of like, oh, you're just going on vacation. There's a lot of work to be done in Jamaica. There's a lot of work to be done in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be visiting Suriname here coming up soon. And it's a huge, Muslim and Hindu communities in these areas. There's a lot of work to be done, and it's right on your doorstep. It's very close by. A lot of the islands in the Caribbean right now, you really have a lot of ministry opportunities. So lots of things happening in our region, in our area, and so really something to think about as you think about missions and just how many different places you could go. Just let us know how we can help you. We're happy to do that. All right.
Very good, huh? Any other questions? We got about 5 minutes. Any other questions real quick? If you got a question, now's a great time to ask it. Brent?
Anything in Roatan?
Roatan? Honduras?
Yeah, we have a little global guy down in just south of Tegucigalpa, but we'd be happy if you'd like to go to Roatan and go scuba diving and start a church over there. I'll help you with that.
Kind of hard to preach with a regulator in your mouth. Kind of hard. You asked. I think the Lord's calling you, Brent. Yeah. Anybody else? I'm going to tell you here in just a moment. We have you hear the vast opportunity that their ministry opens up for us. You see that? And this is very strategic. This partnership, Doug will tell you, when we talked, I said, I'm looking for a missionary. I gave him some very specifics. We're looking for somebody we can partner with that's in Central, maybe into South America, Central America, the Caribbean, somewhere in that area. It'd be even better if they lived in Florida originally, or they have family in Florida, so that we're not trying to bring them from Washington State when they're on furlough to come and communicate to us, report to us when they're home. And so we got to, Bruce sent me, Bruce, see, calling you. I don't know. Who are you? You're Doug. So Doug has actually sent me several different names, begin to look through those, pray through those, and the Lord just led me to the Edgars. And so we reached out to them, and I think we have a great opportunity for a great partnership there. So anybody think that sounds good? Anybody would be maybe interested in going on a trip to Nicaragua? Anybody? Just, you're not committing by raising your hand, okay? Don't go like, if you think, man, I'd love to do that. If the Lord opened up the door for that and I could do that, I'd love to do that, okay? So here's what I want you to do then. Because we have planned I would call it a vision trip. Okay, so it's a vision trip. We're going to go, and whoever goes on this trip, you're going to go down there. We may do some maintenance type of work at the center there or at the camp. We may do some door-to-door visitation. We may do some work with some of the local churches, those church plants. There are a lot of different things we can do, but it's a vision trip. You're going to go. You're going to do a lot of different things. You're going to see a lot of different things. And then our desire is that you're going to come back and you're going to throw more gas on the fire of what God's doing in our church toward the mission, right? You're going to throw more gas on the fire because you're going to come and talk about your excitement. I'm just telling you, especially if you've never been out of the country, you've never done anything like that, you're throwing that at me, weren't you? You're targeting me. It's going to change your life, and you're not going to be able to help but just come back, and it really will. It'll fuel what's going on in our church. So if you're interested in that trip, here's the dates that we're looking at right now. October, and I know that doesn't give us it's not a huge window to prepare for, but it's a doable window. If we don't have enough to do it on that notice, then we can push that back. But this is the first dates, and it might be the last dates for this year that kind of are available, but we can work on that. October the 18th through the 26th. Now, as I understand, let me give them an idea of cost. It'd be about $100 a day. $100 a day, that covers your food, your lodging. They're going to provide translators when we do those things. They provide transportation, all of that, about $100 a day plus travel to get there. So you'll have an idea. It's about an 8-day trip, 7 or 8 day trip, and then the travel. So it could be $1,300, $1,400, I'm guessing, somewhere in that off the top of my head. All right? So if you're interested, sign up sheet, put your name on here, and then we're gonna communicate and work on putting that trip together with the Edgars. Amen? Amen. All right. No other questions? All right, Lord, thank you for this time. Thank you for what we've heard and learned from this exciting ministry. And Lord, if it be your will, we pray you'll put this together, that we can partner with them, and that we can send teams down to partner with them and to pour into their work and be a part of that work hands-on, not just with some money. We want to do that. But Lord, we actually put hands on the work in the field. And we'll just thank you for that, Lord. Bless now the rest of our morning in Jesus' name.